they can watch later. So just to let you know, I am going to start the recording now so that you're aware. Okay, so what I really wanted to start out with is just talking about what's happening around the region, because I think it's super important for us to understand kind of our landscape and how we can all connect together and support the efforts that are happening around Central Ohio. As most of you, or probably all of you, are aware, racism has been declared a health crisis in Ohio. And as a result of that, there has been a lot of work that has been done. I will send out this PowerPoint afterwards as well, because it's linked to a lot of documents and updates about the work that's happening in our region. But there is a plan that has been put together that's called Ohio's Executive Response. And it's really about trying to tackle the disparities that we're seeing in our state, with the goal to create policies and programs that allow every resident to thrive. That's their overall goal. So as part of that, they formed a government advisory board that's just focused on equity. And they have several goals. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just as a highlight, they're really trying to build a state workforce that is representative of the communities that Ohio serves. They're also wanting to establish Ohio as a model employer to really eliminate institutional bias, so that they can serve as a role model for other organizations. They're looking at policies to make sure that they are equity informed. And they're also looking at adopting culturally competent policies and practices. So a lot of work is happening right now in Central Ohio and at the government level. That's exciting work. And I know that they will want K-12 to be involved in that work and to be represented there. Central Ohio Compact, if you're familiar with the compact, that brings together K-12, higher education, and also business and industry. So they did a really nice series, and they're continuing to do equity work this year, just around promoting kind of a grounded understanding of race in the US and looking at the current state of racial disparity specifically for Central Ohio. And then talking about how can all three entities work together to help deploy equity implementation strategies. So that's exciting work, trying to get cross conversations going about how these organizations can work with the state and also business and industry to help promote equity across all different sectors. The YWCA and our Dr. Sierra Austin is very involved in this work. They do fantastic work around racial justice. They really work to confront some of those uncomfortable truths about prejudice and poverty. They convene a lot of dialogues. Maybe you've seen some of those or been involved in those. If you haven't, that's a great resource to check out as well. And then they convene allies together to kind of just share resources and insights and work to bring the biases to light. So that's YWCA has some great resources on their page. They also host quite a few events that I've attended and found very beneficial for me. And then there are quite a few equity institutes happening that you can tap into. The Ohio Equity Institute is actually made up of Columbus and 8 other communities, and they're working with the Department of Health to promote training and support and implementing and evaluating equity-focused projects. And then we recently held an Equity Institute at the ESC where we had several districts participating, just really looking at what are the pillars of equity in your districts, how can you help to promote equity, what are some things and ideas that you need to tackle when you're really looking at everything you do in your district through an equity lens. So as you can see, lots of great work is happening around Central Ohio. And what we really want to do is figure out how can we connect together and support that work and support each other's efforts so we're not working in silos. So as part of that, that's why we're really excited to have equity as the focus of our meeting today and just hear from practitioners in districts that are really working to promote equity in their district. And Dr. Sierra Austin is going to lead us through that conversation by asking some questions. But if you also have some questions that you would like to ask the panelists, you'll have the opportunity to do that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Austin, who's going to introduce our panelists this morning.
All right, good morning, everyone. So I am Dr. Sierra Austin, Regional School Improvement Coordinator for Equity and Diversity at the ESC, and just want to thank everyone again for joining us this morning for this very specially curated conversation around equity and access. So as Christine mentioned, for the last year, we've been experiencing two kind of simultaneous pandemics, systemic racism and COVID-19. And we know that many communities in Ohio have recently declared racism a public health crisis. And resolutions such as these, what they do is identify the need to address generational disparities in healthcare, transportation, housing, education, jobs, and quality of life, which we'll kind of get to today during our panel discussion. As a nation, we've witnessed the inequities present in the K-12 system being exacerbated by the pandemic. We've observed the learning and development disruption of millions of students nationwide. We've witnessed a very stark digital divide, and we've witnessed the widening of the achievement gap, disproportionately and negatively affecting students of color. Additionally, we also continue to grapple with ensuring all staff and students have safe spaces to contextualize what's happening around them socially and politically, ensuring that curriculum, programming, engagement initiatives, and policies are inclusive and equitable and foster a sense of belonging. The ESC is very committed to working with districts on their journeys to equity. And what this means is the dismantling of centuries of systemic racism and oppression that manifests itself in a multitude of ways in our school systems. The Equity Institute, which Christine referenced, is one of the many training and development opportunities that the ESC provides to teams to explore equity issues specific to their respective districts. So all of our panelists today have either participated in the Equity Institute, which is in its second year, have participated in other ESC PD at the district level, or have collaborated with us in other ways around the topic of equity and access. So I'd like to introduce our panel of experts who will share their insight on what their respective districts and organizations are doing on the equity and access front. So first we have Makila Thomas, who is the District Diversity Coordinator at Olentangy. We have Dr. Philip Wagner, the Superintendent at Licking Heights. We have Heidi Kegley, the Superintendent of Delaware City. And we have Dr. Yvonne Brandon, Leadership Coach and Consultant at Jobs for the Future. So panelists, please feel free to jump in and share your perspectives at any time. And the folks who are in the audience, so to speak, please feel free to drop any questions that you have for our panelists in the chat box, and we'll get to those toward the end of the panel. So my first question is, how do you define student success with equity in mind? And Dr. Brandon, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. How do you define student success with equity in mind?
Good morning first to everyone, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel. In my role as a school district leader, I am a retired superintendent as well. And in my role with Jobs for the Future, the definition of success is parallel. It's the same, basically. And I define success based on student-centered outcomes and putting a clear definition to all in the statement, all students can learn, and helping and modeling this philosophy in everything that I do. It is not okay for this to be a one-person initiative. It is not okay for this to be a one group initiative. And I'm so pleased to know and hear and be a part of what's happening in Ohio, because you're from your state on through the educational organization, equity has been highlighted as a primary focus for the state. It's truly important that we always, or what I always do, and I model it, is I always do my best to deliver more than what is expected. And in dealing with equity, you must model that, you must show it in everything that you do, every way that you work, every atmosphere and environment that you're in. You have to gather all of the stakeholders to be around the same table and to better understand and provide them a deep understanding of the difference between equality and equity. Because some people and some organizations feel that equality and equity are synonymous, but they are not. Equity is based on need and applying resources to support those needs, not in supplying resources to the same groups just to divide it up equally. No, it is extremely important to know that. And in knowing that and being a part of organizations that embrace equity, it has been so essential for me to help school districts to develop their plans, not just for the day or for the week, but for the entire uh, length of their existence, so that they can be sustained and they can reach more and more children, more and more students each and every time that they are uh, developing plans and touching all of the different organizations that make up a district, so that it is a district initiative, a district responsibility. And I am also very pleased and would like to send kudos out to the district level personnel that are part of this panel, because it shows that you are truly, truly devoted to making sure that this equity uh, process initiative is not just words. It is a part of the strategic planning for the overall district. Therefore, it has the ability to be sustained.
Thank you, Dr. Brandon. To the other panelists, does anyone want to talk about how your district defines student success?
I can speak up. First, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. This is, like I said this morning, it's going to be an amazing conversation, because anytime we talk about equity, it is important. It's going to be student focused. So thank you, Dr. Yvonne, for saying that. So in Olentangy, our mission is to facilitate maximum learning for all students, and our kind of like tagline is to flourish here. But that's truly important. We want to make sure our students thrive and flourish, and we do that by providing quality instruction and educators who engage in professional learning. This year, all of our required professional development is around anti-racism and sense of belonging. So all of our teachers are getting that professional development there. So that's very important. Providing the resources and opportunities that meet their unique needs. And when you're talking about that equity versus equality, that's right there, making sure things are equitable and fair and just, and will meet their individual learning style. We encourage a growth mindset in our students. And we also maintain high expectations for all. Olentangy is known as being high academically. We earned an A overall on the state report card, but that's not about, like, measuring student success is not all about academics. It's about other things. And for us, it's more than that. It's in our core values. We have our portrait of a learner, which has 4 different principles or pillars, you can call it, that foster the environment of being a purposeful learner, being a resilient learner, being a curious learner, being a kind learner. Those are the qualities or principles that we use to measure success and how prepared they are to enter into our diverse and complex world. So that's how we would measure our success.
Thank you so much, Makila. Heidi, might you have something to add here? How Delaware is defining student success?
Sure. And obviously the other panelists have added so much value to this conversation. And I think it's that other piece of making sure that we're always critically looking at what our instruction is looking like, what's being delivered, how it's being delivered, and with what resources. And I think that that's been a critical piece that we have started that work, obviously ongoing, as Dr. Brandon has shared. This isn't one done, check it off the list, but it's a continual process. And so for us, I think that's just another piece of this to add to what the other panelists shared, was just really looking at those resources and analyzing what's being provided to the students. What are they seeing? Are they seeing themselves in those resources? Can they connect to those resources? And can other students begin to look at learning in a different way and see individuals in a different way than they may have done before?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Heidi. I want to pose this next question specifically to Dr. Wagner, and it is about the ESC's Equity Institute. And these were all topics of discussion that we covered in the Institute, which spanned the course of 4 months and had half-day sessions. So my question, Dr. Wagner, is who from your district attended the Equity Institute? And how were these individuals selected to participate and represent your district?
Sure. Well, I also want to thank everyone for participation today. I really appreciate being asked, and our district's been very focused on this work, so appreciate the invitation. Specific to the question, we started primarily, there were restrictions on how many people could actually participate. We started with all of our lead principals, and then we also involved our central office administration. Heidi, back to you, and Dr. Brandon and Ms. Thomas. We're looking at many facets, and at this many facets, a lot of, Heidi, what you said about the materials is something too. Like we talked about our high school materials, and things that we just didn't pay attention to, or should have been. But looking at Kill a Mockingbird, we've been talking about that. Huckleberry Finn, Adventures of, things like that. So just to add on. But anyways, having our central office administrators, curriculum, HR involved is important. It goes a little beyond the question, but I would tell you also that as you're building critical mass of people around any kind of change effort, you have to bring your, typically your superintendent. I like to see treasurers come along. We follow more of a CFO model as opposed to, nothing against treasurers, but it's more of a leadership role. So our treasurer has been involved with this work, secondarily through the Institute, and as well as our board members. Later on, we'll talk about, I'm sure, more about this. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we have a couple board members involved with this work, and we're giving them updates about this equity, working specifically the Equity Institute.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Wagner. So this question is for everyone, and you hit on it, but I just want to elaborate a little more about why it's so important to have that buy-in from the superintendent to undertake strategic equity initiatives. And again, this is for anyone, but why is it so important to have that buy-in?
As a new superintendent, it was very important for me to show that I needed to learn, and more importantly, I wanted to learn to do better and to set that opportunity up for all of our staff. And the pandemic has brought many challenges, that's for sure. But what it allowed us to do was start the year with full professional development for all staff, all job classifications, and at all levels. And that opportunity to begin to have a common knowledge and understanding. And, Dr. Austin, you were phenomenal in providing that learning to us as a district as we looked at implicit bias and as we looked at the introduction and confronting systemic racism and how to truly be anti-racist. And so as a superintendent, you have to be willing and that desire to want to do better for your students in your district.
I can add on to that. Thank you so much, Heidi. I completely agree with you. You have to have buy-in from the superintendent. You know, they help to establish and maintain those equity programs that you have, and they make sure you have the financial backing to do so as well. So that's super important. So for our superintendent, we constantly communicate with him. We are involved in their weekly district leadership team meetings. Our district leadership team is present at a lot of the programs that we do. And they engage in some of the same professional development that our teachers have been involved in around the anti-racism, implicit bias, and microaggressions. We've had book studies with them as well as our school board. They've been involved all together with different book studies around anti-racism. And we also, you know, we just now got this new position, which I obtained in July. So now we are a team of 4. And so for as large of a district as Olentangy is, that's a lot of work for 4 people to do. So when you have that buy-in from your superintendent and your district leadership team, it makes a small team feel large. And we are able to get more work done when everyone is on the same page, so.
Absolutely. Thank you, Makila. Dr. Yvonne, Dr. Wagner, any additional thoughts on why it's important to have that buy-in?
Dr. Brandon, why don't you go, because I've had an opportunity to speak already.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wagner, and good to see you.
Thank you too.
From my perspective, it is important that the superintendent is on board, because when you start looking at from an equity lens and you look at your overall district, there are going to be lots of policies, procedures, operations, and processes that you're going to have to view from the perspective of, is this equity in the making, or what progress are we making, or what do we have to change? What do we have to stop doing? What do we have to alter? And how do we impact everyone who's a part of our stakeholder map? Being a superintendent, there are community people that you have to bring on board. You have to make sure that this is a totally respected and totally connected initiative throughout your community. And your community is broad. It's not just the building or the office that you are sitting in. It's parents, it's business leaders, it's faith-based leaders, it's your partners in the after-school arena, it's your governmental officials, your local officials that you have to have a partnership for them to understand that this is something that we have to do. And this is something that we have to do together, not fragmented. So I think it's very essential for the superintendent to be a part of it. Dr. Wagner?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you too, because I know there's life after the superintendency. You survived. So Heidi and I are looking at you. Okay, there are moments.
there is an I call it Superintendents Anonymous for recovering superintendents. I have my coin. Okay.
Yeah. We'll need membership at some point, but for now,
okay.
this is our critical work. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add on that. You know, I think everyone's going to cover the topic from where I started. But you know, I mean, basically, you lead by example. You know, I mean, if this is important to you, you know, show that it's important, and that's what we believe. So I just think that everyone's covered it well, in addition to what I originally started with. So.
All right, thank you all, very insightful. So Dr. Wagner, I have another question kind of specifically for you regarding the Equity Institute. And you all have kind of hit on this, but we know that an equity lens should influence every decision, every policy, every curricular or pedagogical approach and practice. And the Equity Institute centered 4 pillars, and I'm going to drop these pillars in the chat just so everyone can see what they are. They were cultural mindset, student-centered teaching and learning, family and community engagement, and policies and practices. So again, each month we spent about 4 hours talking about each of these areas. So Dr. Wagner, I was wondering if you could briefly identify 1 or 2 of these pillars and share how the Equity Institute has fostered growth in these areas for Licking Heights.
Sure. I think where we've had our most success or traction so far, and this is always work in progress, and we know we haven't arrived, but we've primarily this year looked at more at the cultural mindset, and I would say the family and community engagement. The other 2 aspects about student-centered teaching and learning, obviously important, and policies and practices, obviously important. I can speak to all 4 of those, but starting with the 2 I would identify as cultural mindset. I think one of the things that is most important in this process has been a leveling up and having a common knowledge or language sometimes around this. I lived and worked most of my professional life in Northeast Ohio, and I've come Central Ohio, love it here, but there's some cultural differences, and I feel like I had a little better exposure and awareness, I would say, from Northeast Ohio. Having said that, not picking on people, I just feel like we have to level up. I will tell you, being Caucasian and going through this process, there are a significant number of people who feel comfortable coming to me, also Caucasian, saying, I didn't know, I didn't realize, I wasn't looking, I didn't look at it that way. So it's been having the comfortability around those conversations and really trying to operationalize, and making it safe, I would say too, for people to be able to talk about race and equity and other aspects. Actually, it's not only race, but just in diversity in general. With family engagement, I would tell you that one of the things that we're doing, we started just to get some traction, is to we have a courageous conversation group that meets monthly. It involves our staff, some of our staff, and parents, and 2 board members who sit on the group, so they're there every time too. So we've been looking at that lens and that aspect. A lot of our group work is very similar. It's about leveling the playing field and bringing people up to a common language and comfortability again. I think that there's a lot of different efforts in this, and one of the things in preparing for this panel, it was useful for me because we need to do a better job of organizing. We have a lot of different aspects of this. Like, we are involved with Ohio State through Johns Hopkins, and we have a partnership about family engagement in this area. And the formal training starts in April, and it's a 3-year rollout process. So we started there above and beyond this work, but working with Dr. Austin in this work has helped us, again, focus that. So we're looking at different aspects. And Dr. Austin, at some point, I have to talk to you too about kind of bringing this all together, I think, and looking at how, so we're not too fragmented. I'll close with this on this section on parents. I would say parents have appreciated the work and have a lot of positive communications about it. And we'll talk more about student intersections as well too, but there's a lot of good work there in that, so I won't say too much and stay on topic there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wagner. And for others who have not or did not attend the Equity Institute in 2020, I'm just interested to hear what's going on in your district around these 4 pillars: cultural mindset, student-centered teaching and learning, family and community engagement, and policies and practices. Is there anything that's worked well that you'd like to share?
For us in Delaware City Schools, we're very blessed to have a wonderful community. And 3 years ago, the Delaware African American Heritage Council was formed by parents and community members who wanted to see change and wanted to be a partner in that. And through that, we've created this will be the third annual opportunity for students to share their learning, to share their artwork, their music. And that's just a wonderful opportunity for us to highlight our students in a way that allows them to share what is meaningful to them. And also through that, we have our Unity Community Center that is in our community and provides tutoring for our students, programming, and outreach opportunities. Over the summer, they hosted community conversations. I was one of the speakers. Law enforcement was one of the speakers, city leaders, and really looking at what should an ideal Delaware look like and what are those steps that we can begin taking to work towards that goal. Obviously, we know that there are unjust things that have been happening. We need to make those changes. Some are happening quickly, some are happening slowly, but we have to continue taking action in those areas. And with those partnerships, that's been a critical piece for us.
Thank you. So Heidi, you talked a little bit about what's going on that is directly involving students in these endeavors, which is very important. And I want to hear a bit more from everyone about how student voices are directly involved in strategic equity initiatives. So Heidi, I don't know if you want to speak maybe briefly about the DEI team, for example, but just interested to know how student voices are being amplified and a part of the conversation.
Sure. So over the summer, I started talking with some of our former students right before everything started happening with the Dear Delaware. I know other school districts experienced some of that on social media, but I had started meeting with some of our recent graduates prior to that. And once the Dear Delaware started, I also encouraged and asked, actually, I directly asked all of our administrators to read through that. Again, we may not know each of those individual students and the circumstances surrounding it, but at the time, that was their story. And we needed to hear that and see that through their eyes and through their words. And then I started to begin to form our diversity, equity, and inclusivity team. And part of that was, it was critical for me to have students as part of that team. And so we meet monthly. Dr. Austin facilitates those meetings for us, and student voice is shared and students participate, and they're participating with staff members from across our district and starting to build what those things are that we need to be doing differently and how we should be doing them differently. We still have a lot of work to do, but having student voice as part of that team is very important to me, and I think a critical piece in allowing us to move forward as a district.
Thank you, Heidi. I see Dr. Brandon, you unmuted.
I was just going to share that having student voice as a part of the process also helps us to have a clarity of intent and language. Students may not see things the way we see them. In fact, we probably see them from all of the educational courses that we've ever experienced, all of the PD that we've ever experienced, and we see those types of cues, but students don't see that. And we're not very good at translating what we see such that they understand. And so I applaud all of you that have taken into account student voice, because you will not only know what they're thinking, but you will also be able to put guardrails around what you are doing to the point that you directly impact them, and that it's not so scattered. It's going to be focused on them and how they interpret what you're doing. And having that open dialogue is really, really essential. I participated in a forum basically with, I think, about 12 students from a district. And honestly, they just knocked everything out of the park. They captured what was going on in a few sentences, no educationally applied to it, and they told us what was on their minds. They also wrote a letter to their principal about what was on their minds, and they asked for this particular forum. So even though it was a lot of adults on the panel, it changed, at least for me, it changed what I planned to say based on the fact that they were so involved in the process. And honestly, I think it was probably one of the most rewarding experiences that I had in a long time, because it was kids, students asking really serious questions about what can they expect from us as educators in the future and when school opens. And it also, they shared a lot of their emotional trauma and a lot of things that were going on within their communities, within their households, that many educators may not have been aware of. And they asked, how are you going to help us to overcome or mitigate these barriers? And it was wonderful. So I think that was primarily one of the best experiences I have had in a long time.
I wanted to be able to chime into this question. Is that possible, Dr. Austin? Okay. So yes, I love when we talk about student voice, because it's different when it's the kids talking, right? It's so different. We can sit in a room as adults and create all these plans for them, and it's like if we just ask and figure out what the need is and where they see the gap, they will tell you. You know, they are amazing. We have so when I first started this position, one of my first roles was to sit in on a conversation with our superintendent in one of our student groups, which was SADE. We have Student Association for Diversity, Inclusion, and Education, and then OLSD for Equality. So I sit in on these meetings, and I mean, these students have their stuff together, okay? They have like a whole plan written out, initiatives, what they want to see. They're kind of like making demands, like we need to see this in our district. And we were just blown away by their courage, first of all, but also that they have a plan, and we don't always have to plan for them. If we just give them a platform and for them to share their voice and their experience, that's all they need. So it was amazing to be a part of that experience. So we asked them to be a part of our action plan that we're doing. We have about 32 goals, district goals that we're doing in terms of equity and inclusion around recruitment and retention and stakeholder engagement, policies, all of those things. And we have students who have reviewed our goals to make sure that they are in line with, what they want to see for their district, the vision for their district. We also created a student leadership advisory council who just advises us as an equity and inclusion team and provides recommendations to us. So it's about 5 to 7 high school students from all 4 of the high schools that come together every month, and we have a conversation with them, and they have productive dialogue. We talk about, various topics that are affecting them. And it's just really an enlightening experience. These are the people that are our future generation that are going to be running all of this. And so it's just amazing to see that. Just a little plug here for our One Community Conference that we have on April 21st, we have our student keynotes, and it's one of the most loved parts of our One Community Conference. It's like a TED style talk, and students stand up and they talk about various things that have impacted them during this double pandemic. But our whole theme is around empathy and resilience and service and growth. And so it's going to be amazing to hear. We're actually hosting the auditions right now, but it's like, how do you pick? How do you choose between these, amazing students? So Yeah, we definitely, would not even have this work without student voice. It is so imperative. So I hope that you can join us on April 21st. I just had to throw that in there.
Dr. Austin, it's, a lot of this ground's been covered, but, and Superintendent Kegley said it well. I think that when you look at this, right, I use an I say in my district, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, I guess, as the adage goes. We've had student voice for a long time. It's just a matter of remembering or thinking about the students and inviting them into the process. Like we have a superintendent student advisory council. We have a couple of board representatives who are students, come to board meetings and all too. So a lot of the same work as other districts. But I would tell you that it's refreshing to talk to the kids. Every time I walk away from one of those meetings, I have a renewed sense of faith for the future, or hope for the future, I should say. It's exciting. And the kids are great. They'll just, like it was said, you just ask them and they'll talk to you about it. And then they're happy you want to talk about it. So I always enjoy that kind of that work. But we have some clubs, and some of which have been developed by kids. We've had a long-standing cultural club, we have diaspora. And just recently, out of some of these discussions, we have a great gay straight student alliance that started as well too. So there's been some work there too, and that's probably, this is about our second year now. We've lost some momentum because of the pandemic and being disrupted with the school year. But yeah, it's student voice is always great.
Thank you all. I see everyone lit up and was beaming while answering that question. So that is phenomenal. My next question kind of lends itself to something that Dr. Brandon mentioned, and that is around emotional trauma, including but not limited to racialized trauma that students may be experiencing now. So my question is, how does SEL lend itself to DEI? How does SEL lend itself to DEI?
I'll go first since I've been kind of laying back here a little bit. So in our district, we're a lot of the work, the SEL work has come through PBIS, and we have very good PBIS teams. And I've always been impressed with the district that we've even had good traction at the high school. Sometimes you find that's more challenging. So it's been good. For us, we always, we're trying to make sure we have more of that equity lens through the learning environments with PBIS. We're also looking at a couple of programs. So, again, I'll use the phrase, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like in our K-6, we're using Stanford Harmony, and it fits very nice with our PBIS program, especially Tier 1. We have lessons that flow from that. It makes it a good launching point for teachers. So we're doing that K through 6, and we've been doing that. We've already engaged in that work. There's a gap though for us in 7-12, and we've been looking at different options there to see more strategic work. And we're pretty close. We haven't finalized this yet, but we're pretty close on what's called 7 Minds. And we think we'll be infusing that with our 7 through 12 grades again through PBIS. And we're gearing up for that now. And we're looking to launch that in the 21-22 school year. So I'll let the other panelists jump in, but I want to lay that groundwork.
We implemented Panorama this year as an SEL tool for us, and really starting to dive into that data as our curriculum team and our principals, and looking at sense of belonging, and how sense of belonging then can lend itself to facilitating that trust and allowing students to be willing to share with us when they see things happening, when they feel something, when they hear something, and how are they reporting that to us. And that is still the piece that we're working on. And we need to talk to our students, as we've all shared on this panel, what's going to work best for them. As adults, we can come up with great tools because we think we know, when all we really need to do, as Ms. Thomas so eloquently stated, just ask them. They will tell us. And we don't need to spend that energy on that piece of the puzzle. And so that's going to be one of the areas that we must continue that work on and have something in place. I hope by spring, if not to start the school year next year, on what that tool is and how that's going to work. We have all kinds of tools for school safety, but I don't think students view school safety in the sense that we're trying to say all things in the school that make you feel safe. I think just the same with safety drills. People focus on active shooter and focus on those pieces when there is so much more to making sure that a school truly feels safe for all students, no matter what their race, their ethnicity, or their sexual orientation.
Absolutely, and thank you both, Superintendent Heidi and Dr. Wagner, for bringing in that kind of intersectional piece as we talk about this equity work. So we are certainly focused on race and racism, but also those other categories of identity and student experience. So definitely appreciate that. This next question I'm going to pose to everyone, and if folks who are and the audience per se have some questions, please feel free to drop that in the chat. But this question is, what challenges have you faced in advancing your equity agenda? So there have probably been a few, but talk to us about what those challenges have been thus far and how you've confronted them.
I think one of the challenges was starting the school year with this being our focus, and some individuals believing that there were no problems and why were we spending time doing this, or others questioning my approach to starting the school year like this, and why is Heidi doing this? Why, there isn't a problem, or that was a really bold approach. But if we don't start, we're never going to move. And I cannot wait for everyone to be ready to change, nor am I able to assess where everyone's true belief system is. But through conversations, through relationship building, and through trust, has allowed some of those conversations to start to happen. And our principals, specifically one of our assistant principals who's African American, was approached by other staff members and asked questions about why Heidi was doing this. And because we have a common goal and a common understanding, he was able to talk to that staff member. It doesn't have to be everyone coming to the superintendent or everyone coming to the Board of Education. We have to have the trust within our staff members to be able to talk with each other and be able to say, I have made that statement. I didn't think about what it truly meant. Or I have heard that and didn't realize how that was impacting our students. We have to be willing to admit when we're wrong, to admit when we've messed up, and to admit when we don't know. Otherwise, true change won't happen.
I completely agree 100%. Thank you for saying that. So my family has been involved in Olentangy for several years, over 20 years. And the district has definitely changed. It's become more diverse, and we still have a long way to go as far as the hiring of our, staff, our teaching population, to make sure they mirror our student population. So we do have some work to do in that area. But when you've been working in equity work for so long and you're pushing, like I think about times when my mom would hold diversity committee meetings in her living room. I remember that, so seeing it come to fruition now that we have a whole department dedicated to this, you can definitely see the progress. It's slow, but it's there. And we, about 10 years ago, formed our diversity committee, and we had one person doing all of that work. So, having limited resources and not having anyone to share the responsibility with is hard. It was a challenge for us. And I think now that we have, more hands on deck, I think that's going to help. But I'm going to tell you, I think one of the biggest challenges that we've experienced was that Dear OLSD. I know you talked about that, Heidi, in your district, but just hearing the stories of discrimination that our students continue to face, even though we're trying so hard doing this work, it just was so disheartening. It was just sad. And, I felt like at the time reading those, I mean, we definitely use those in our professional development with teachers and things like that, but just hearing, we actually asked some students to put the voice to it for us so we can actually hear it differently, you know, coming from students. But I think that just kind of set everything into motion. Once that it showed the urgency and the need that these kids they don't feel safe right now, and they are struggling, and we need to do all we can for them, you know. And so over the summer, we held some town halls. I want to say it was a total of 5 town halls, and with all community members, staff members, everything, and just to hear their voice, to figure out what can we do, what has been the problem, and how can we fix it. And one of the things was the lack of diversity in our administration, and they did hire another full-time diversity coordinator. That's me. And so we were able to do that, but they put the funds behind that. We also, you know, did the professional development I told you about with the anti-racism and sense of belonging as well. And then that's when the action plan that we have with the goals came out of that. And another thing that from the students and from the town halls and everything that happened is our curriculum integration project. And so we're actually working, it's a large project, but we're working on making sure that everyone can see themselves in the books that they're reading, in the resources they have, and making sure that we connect that and have that connection with our students, because like I said, they didn't feel that. So yeah, that was probably the biggest challenge. And some things that I am learning is something that Dr. Brandon spoke about, is just, you know, working together, collaborating, you know, enlisting the help of community members and other departments. Like our curriculum and our communications team work closely with us. And so those are the kind of things that you need to have in order to see that progress happen. And then also listening to the students, we talked about that. But I think, and this is just, you know, something that we're getting into now, is like having some type of equity audit, because basically you need to identify where those gaps are. You know, we can go on and go on and go on and think everything is okay. But when that Dear Old SD came out and they're talking about the gaps that they see as students, we thought it was definitely important, imperative for us to have that equity audit. So we're in the process now of getting that together, because that is super important to find out where those disparities are and how we can fix it.
A lot of my work with the district has been similar, so I'll repeat a lot of it, but Superintendent Kegley said something important minutes ago, where she talked about building trust and comfortability around the conversation. That's really been a lot of our work, is to say it's okay to ask questions, it's okay. You know, and again, I was reflecting for some staff talking to me directly. I'll tell you something else that's interesting too is, and it's just a personal experience talking with staff, as there's become more comfortable and trust around this topic, is looking at things monolithically. And we've had some discussion around that too. Just because you identify with a group doesn't mean you understand everything about that group. I've used the example to use more of an I statement. I don't know anything about motorcycles, never been part of a gang or anything like that. So I wouldn't, you know, don't ask me for that. But there are other times where I think we look at people or groups they don't have, and let's you understand everything there is to know about that group. And there's been some honest dialogue around that. And so, like I said, a lot of that's trust and open communication for us. So I echo what everyone else said, but just add a little bit more there.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. Dr. Brandon, I think you unmuted.
I did, thank you. I agree with everything that has been said, but I want to just share one other piece that may be a barrier, and that is to use your school-based or district-based data to unpeel the onion. I found that we love to talk about data when it comes to comparing academic success, graduation rates, attendance numbers, but we don't talk about data with respect to having an equity lens focused on the data. And sometimes a picture paints 1,000 words. So people that are a little bit reluctant about this being a check the box kind of initiative will I believe, see things differently if they are shown the data to support the initiative, to support student-centered success. And we just don't dig deeply enough with the data. And sometimes, you know, just having a session and helping people to better understand how to dig deep into the data so that they could come up with their own conclusions by viewing that data from an equity lens. I think that's a barrier that I have seen not only in my work with Ohio, but my work in Virginia, my work that I do in Missouri. You know, it's prevalent all around.
Dr. Brandon, just real quick, I know we have to move on, but that's so important what you just said, because years ago, we started looking at student attendance and the connection to student performance. People were surprised, but I will tell you, in our high school, we looked at federal definitions. The number one grouping of students who miss the most amount of time from school are white females. So it was quite counter to what people would think sometimes. In fact, our students of color had some of the highest rates of attendance. And that was breaking a myth or maybe a misconception some people had, and we continue that work. That's part of a larger project we've been working on, but there's a direct corollary, especially as it becomes more exacerbated with student attendance and student performance.
Exactly. And when you look at it from adding family income element to that, you'll find some other issues with that population that you identified with white females that perhaps need to be addressed from an equity perspective.
Yeah, honestly, we're still digging through that to see, but it's debunks some myths that people had.
Absolutely.
The other thing, and you talked about student data, you know, there's racial achievement gaps. You can see it in the data. It doesn't mean everyone within groups, but you see it. Look at Asians, look at Caucasians. You know, you can see gaps, and we've been looking at some of that. And I would say some of we haven't talked a lot about institutional racism or barriers, but some of the things that I know that we changed years ago was this hierarchical process you had to have when you wanted to go into an honors class, for example.
Absolutely.
You know, you had to go through these logistic steps. And I'll tell you, we started this years ago, and we just said, listen, why don't we allow, you know, I don't say anyone, but we allow students the opportunity to try and explore and to you know, see if they can be successful. And many times they can be, or they'll come back and say, you know, I wasn't quite ready. Can I do this? And then get back to that. So we start looking at pathways and how to get them on there. But there are just institutional things like that. And, you know, if you're comfortable with the lockstep method, it's been working X number of years. And I would just add that to this process too.
And just one other thing, one of the processes that would galvanize a united support factor within your building is just looking at grades from an equity lens, because that's something that's in the locus of control in the building, in the classroom, just looking at grades. And that would help people to understand there's more to the talk. It's the numbers that you see that adds more value to the talk.
You know, there's research that we've done in some of that work, and it was years ago, but looking at the number of kids who are referred by their teachers for some type of advanced placement, enrichment, and looking demographically, that then look at GPAs, it's not what everyone would think exactly. In fact, there's, you talk about implicit bias, which we've spent a lot of time working on and showing people that obviously there are biases, but that work really reflects some of that as well too, and you'll see. Because I mean, we kind of know the outcome, but sometimes students of color aren't the ones who are most recommended into that track, yet their GPAs will be sometimes better or on par with some of their white counterparts.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for that robust discussion on that last question. That was phenomenal. Just want to remind everyone that we are nearing the end of our panel, so please drop those questions in the chat if you have them for our panelists. And the last question I want to pose is to everyone. And so right now in this work, we often hear the phrase equity is a journey rather than a destination. And I want to know, what does this mean to you right now in the context that we're living in? So equity is a journey rather than a destination. What does that statement mean to you?
For me, the fatigue is real. This work is very draining at times. It's very rewarding as well, but seeing how students are struggling and making our policies and procedures equitable for all students, I mean, that's a lot and it takes time. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. I think for us, it's important, especially to have that open communication with our community members so they know that what we're working towards, having them involved in the process. So we have this action plan, but it's a 3 to 5 year plan. This is not something that we're going to attack, right away. We have little things that we can do that's going to lead up to that, but it's like chipping away at the ice, right? So it just takes time. Throughout this journey that I've been working in this work, realizing that it's self-care and balance, making sure that, okay, I'm doing this work and I love this work and I want to make sure that, we're making progress, but am I also taking that time for myself? Am I being able to have other things that pour into me so I'm able to pour into others? It's really just balancing all of that together. We recently had a speaker come this past Saturday, and her name is Elena Aguilar. She does, coaching for equity, and she has different books out. But one of the analogies she used with this work is like the baby steps, and how when you see a baby walking, the baby's walking and he falls down, and it's like, you think, does the baby say, okay, well, we failed, that's it, I can't walk, I'm not gonna do it. That's not what happens. Literally baby steps is what this work is. We get up, we try again, we fix it, we apologize, we move forward. All the things you need to do to make sure that we continue, because eventually we're gonna run, and we can do that, but we have to take those baby steps. So I'm in it for the long haul, but definitely learning how to balance it with that self-care too.
And I think about that journey also and how much we have to be willing to reach out to others. That we can't do this in isolation within our own district and believe that we're going to fix it. Or like you said, that we can check it off a list. We can definitely celebrate those small steps when we know we have identified something that was wrong and unjust and we've put procedures in place, but we have to continue to check back to make sure that it's still working the way we intended it to. But I know personally, there's no way I could do this journey alone, nor would I want to. And the people that I have already had the opportunity to meet and learn from are helping me. And I want to be able to share some of the things that we've done that might help someone else. But journeys are also hard. Journeys have great highlights, and then journeys are sometimes hard. And I love the analogy that Ms. Thomas just shared, because that's the truth. But we still have to get up and we have to help each other up in that process.
I just want to add that, Ms. Thomas, your analogy was so fitting to the conversation and so appropriate, because you also have to look at this as far as being able to build the stamina that is necessary within the district, within that baby, in order for that baby to be able to be stronger with every step. Additionally, not only the stamina, but have the patience that's necessary, because this is a journey. It is a long journey. And to help people understand that it is long, that you're going to fall, and still have the confidence to keep pushing is essential to this process. It's easy to quit, when some of the elements are not there. But with this, you can't quit. The outcomes are so valuable to us as a school district, a community, a state, a nation, that we cannot quit. So I just love that analogy, because it just made me start thinking about what else is necessary. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think about when you say don't quit, Banksy, I think is the name. If you get tired, learn to rest, not to quit. Yeah.
A lot of good comments. I don't have a lot to add, except that Dr. Austin, your work, I can see, reflects some of the work that we've been doing in the district for years, and we're familiar with Glenn Singleton's work on courageous conversations about race. And when presented with this question, which often comes up, or that the question is, when are we going to get there, basically, or how do we continue with this? But also, can you tell me what to do, is another question we get. And obviously, if we had that answer, we would, implement that immediately. But Glenn Singleton has many tenets there, but there's two of them that we really have reflected on and help us. One is experiencing discomfort, but the second is to accept and really expect non-closure through this process. So it's a journey. You keep, working through it. The other thing I would say too, and I think it's probably for all of us in Central Ohio, is developing systems around this, because what you'll find is high rates of change, whether it's Olentangy, Big Walnut, us, we're all fast growing school districts, a lot of movement. My district has about 4,800 students. The pandemic has kind of slowed that growth a bit this year, the health pandemic. But I will tell you, I've seen things I've never seen before, because through our first semester, we've turned over 981 students out of almost 4,800 students. So a high transient population. So it makes it harder on this work, and you have to, I think, with all of our work, but if we're going to embrace this journey concept, you want to make sure you have systems and things that can be deployed through this process, so that you can get people up to speed, as you're moving through this work. So, and I'm sure that's similar for all of us in Central Ohio, because it's one of the fastest growing areas right now.
All right, well, thank you to all of our panelists for your time and expertise today. We appreciate the work that you're doing and the commitment you've made. And we know that this work is not always easy work to undertake. So now I will turn the program back over to Christine.
Thank you, Dr. Austin, and thank you to all the panelists. We really appreciate your insights and your conversation. Great insights and thoughts today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. So next, we're going to move into our next part of the program. We're excited that Tyler Overstreet from Newsela is joining us today, and he is going to be sharing with us their new anti-bias and anti-racism collection that they put together. And I'm really excited for Tyler to share how this can support all of the great work that you've been describing in your districts, and another resource for us to look at and use in our work. So Tyler, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's a tough crowd to follow after that. I don't know if I would have known that I had to follow that roundtable, I might not have agreed to show up today. That was great. I appreciate everyone sharing. I'm a former educator, so I love being a fly on the wall in these conversations. Helps keeps me grounded in the work that I'm doing and connect. So I appreciate everyone sharing. I'm going to share my screen just so I can pull up some information for everyone, and we will dive in. There we go. Let me share it. Okay. So thanks again for having me. My name is Tyler Overstreet. I am a curricular solution architect here at Newsela. Which fancy title just means that I get to work with districts and have conversations around curriculum, goals, what's going on in the district, how can Newsela support, and really make sure that Newsela is providing the right solutions for the districts and not just providing resources that maybe don't fit. So really my job is to make sure that those resources fit and that they're supporting teachers and students across districts. I'm also joined by my coworker here in Ohio. Sarah is also on the call. Sarah, if you want to say hi to everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
All right. So like we mentioned, we're going to be talking about the work that we're doing. Just kind of a quick agenda here. I want to do some background, talk a little bit about our journey here at Newsela and how we've gotten to where we are now, and really dive into the resources that we're excited that we just launched last month, and then take some questions at the end, some feedback, because we're always wanting to grow this process. That's something that Newsela really is rooted in, is we want to hear what people have to say so we can make our product better to meet your needs. So definitely have questions, provide feedback at the end as we go through this. So a little background, Newsela. Our editorial creed here, you can see, is inspiring readers to be knowledgeable, thoughtful, empathetic, and active global citizens. We're rooted in this idea of equity. That's been something that's been really foundational to our company. This idea that bringing content to our platform to engage readers, not just background information articles, not just content-based articles, but all types of articles to provide students with reading engagement, provide mirrors and windows and opportunities into authentic text for students, is really where we started at Newsela. And a little going back even further, just in case you're not familiar with Newsela, we're an instructional content platform. We curate articles and content from around the world. We publish content every single day, 10 to 15 new pieces, so we're up to date and relevant. We also, when we bring the content to our site, we put it at 5 different reading levels for our students. And at a click of a button, teachers can automatically differentiate the content on our site. So every student can read the exact same article at the reading level that's appropriate for them to really engage in those conversations. So as we talked about in that roundtable, engaging kids in these conversations, we're helping set that up by providing those different reading levels so all kids can feel included and feel part of the conversation. Is it a magic silver bullet that is going to fix everything for kids? And are they going to be, standing up like slow clap? Can I have another article, please? No, but it's one less barrier that we can provide for students. So if we can provide that content access and allow them as a pathway into conversations, it's really what we want to provide and support. With that, I just want to kind of mention that we've changed a little bit in this last year, though. We used to be just kind of this open platform where teachers and students got on the site, they looked around, they curated resources, activities, lessons. It was really all in the teachers to build that piece. But based on feedback from teachers and understanding that teachers don't have time to go out and vet every single resource, and they're spending Sunday afternoons finding and building and creating, we want to help out with that process. So we created Newsela ELA, Social Studies, Science, and a Social Emotional Learning collection. Within all these collections, you're going to find articles, text sets, lesson plans, projects, all curated and ready to go for teachers. So it's really building out these new products to support. You can still search and find and play around on the site, but we want to make sure that we're being very intentional about how we can support teachers with their time and how we can support them as they're moving through their curriculum. One thing that Newsela, I think we've always done a really good job at is this multicultural perspectives, is having that element in there, but we want to go beyond that. So this past year, what we've done is kind of change that model and really enhance that process of how we're providing students and teachers with access into our platform and really doing the equity work that everyone's talking about right now with the roundtable, how we can support in that work. So we've kind of changed our process of partnering with different organizations. So typically how we partner is we go out, Associated Press, for example, we partner with them, we bring their articles to our site. We understand, though, that that's not enough anymore. We need to support districts beyond just providing them with articles and content. So we're partnering with organizations like Teaching Tolerance, the Marshall Project, Facing History in Ourselves, not just as content providers, but also as thought partners. So you're going to see elements of teaching tolerance and their frameworks and elements built throughout our entire platform. All those products that we mentioned, you're going to be able to see the equity work that these organizations have been doing for a really long time. And I think that's one of the things that I'm proud of here at Newsela is understanding that there are other places that have been doing this great work for a really long time. Instead of us just saying, hey, here's how we think it should be done, let's partner with organizations that know how to do this work, that have been doing this work, and really enhance our product and providing teachers and students with the best possible resources available. So we're excited to launch that. Like I said, you're going to see these elements throughout the entire product. But what we're going to do today is really zoom in on our brand new collection that we have in our SEL collection. Our anti-bias, anti-racism resource just came out last month. We have a whole instructional design team that we hired this past year to build out this collection. So we've actually went out and hired new people, new organizations to come in to help us build out this resource. And just a little background about why is it in the Newsela SEL. And I think Dr. Austin, the question hit on it earlier, is that we understand at Newsela that these conversations are going to provoke emotion. We know that they are tough conversations for teachers and students. So we also want to provide supports within this collection to help out with those conversations. How do we cope and understand emotion and work through these processes? Because we know, like I said, it's emotionally charged conversations for some people. And to really start looking internally and understanding our own bias and understanding our own identity, that's a lot of work. And there's a lot of supports that need to be in place. So we're adding those into this collection. And before I actually dive into the live site to show you this collection, I just want to kind of give you the framework for how we're building it. We're starting off with building out units that are aligned to both CASEL and the C frameworks, as well as aligned to the teaching tolerance social justice standards. So you're going to see elements of that throughout. We're organizing it around 30 to 60 minute bite-sized lessons with up-to-date content that's relevant, it's authentic, and really encourages students to engage in those conversations, along with being differentiated at the 5 levels I mentioned earlier. And then we're also building out instructional supports. And I think that's sometimes where resources miss the mark, because they don't have those supports to help teachers and students. We know that some teachers are more inclined to have these conversations. They have the resources, they have the tools, the vocabulary to really engage students. But we also know that some teachers aren't ready for these conversations, and they don't have the tools and they don't have the words to really dive into these conversations with students. We want to make sure that they have those supports. So you're going to be able to find instructional resources, activities, lessons, vocabulary, professional development opportunities, support teachers in engaging in this work. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hop into the site to just kind of show you what this looks like. I don't want to just sit here and bore you with a slide deck. I actually want to get into the collection. So I know we have a lot of current partners here. So if you have our social emotional learning collection, you're already going to have access to this. But if you're, if you want to talk about what this social emotional learning collection looks like, I'll give my contact information at the end and we can set you up a demo account to also dive into this. But I'm going to be in our middle school collection right now for social emotional learning. And you'll see here in the top left, our anti-bias, anti-racism resource. And it's going to be the same layout that I mentioned earlier. Left-hand side units, middle is going to be content, right-hand side are going to be actual resources. But you can see the different units that we're building out, building background context knowledge, providing classroom values, shared vocabulary, working on identities, understanding what our identities are, historical connections, present connections. So looking at it through multiple lenses in these units. And then when you actually dive into these units, so I'm going to go into building knowledge and context, you're going to see the subtopics that we provide. For example, race and racism. What is colorism? So a lot of different topics to really dive into. And then I'm actually going to go into a collection here to show you what one of these lesson resources looks like. So notes to teachers, we're providing key terms to make sure that we're using the proper terms as we talk about these topics, different activities for teachers to really dive in and engage. And then also framework alignment. So where did we build this and why did we build it? Giving some background context with that. One thing I do want to point out, and I think we talked about in the roundtable, was the journey piece of it. This is our first iteration of this collection. It just came out last month. So we're not just rolling this out and we're stopping and saying, all right, that's good enough. You're going to continue to see this collection grow, not only here, but also throughout the platform. So make sure you're staying, tuned in, There's going to be more releases coming out. We're going to be adding more into this product because this is work that Newsela is committed to. It's not something that's new to us, but it's something that we really want to make sure that we're providing the best quality resource to support teachers in their journey as they move through this. And we're not just going to stop at just content. I do want to point out that we also provide professional learning around this. So we have in-house on the product, ready to go resources to help teachers dive into it, including identity development courses, which walk through teachers, looking at their own identity, understanding their own bias, and then how do we actually apply these practices into the classroom? So for example, I took the White Racial Identity Development course this past weekend. It's about a 2-hour course looking at my own identity, understanding like how sometimes good intentions miss the mark, and understanding how to thoughtfully use Newsela resources, content, and how to engage students into that conversation. So a lot of great resources built into the platform. Like I said, we have an entire team designing out constant resources for this to make sure that teachers and students feel supported. So that was a pretty quick overview of the work that we're doing here at Newsela. It's a lot of me talking there. Former history teacher, so I apologize when I get started. I just keep going sometimes. That's why I have Sarah, on the side to message me like, hey, Tyler, like, okay, bring it back. But I do want to just kind of provide a little bit of space here for any questions that you might have, what's resonating with you. If you have the collection already, you've already been using it, we'd love to hear that too. Or if you want to dive into it, like I said, we can set up demo accounts and really help provide some access to that. And so you can start diving into it. So I'll open it up to the floor for any questions.
Hi, my name is Jana Alec. I am the Director of Teaching and Learning at Groveport Madison Schools, and I just want to give a shout out to Newsela. We've been working with them for almost 2 years on a custom collection, as well as working with them on the other components of Newsela, such as the SEL component. They just launched this. I really haven't had a lot of chance to dive in to it very well, but I know Tyler just presented this to our social studies committee as we talked about our custom collection. And so Newsela, I can't say enough about their customer service and about their willingness to be flexible and jump right in and help teachers whenever they're in need of content. So thank you to Newsela, definitely a company worth partnering with.
Thank you, Jana. Jana is also super nice there, and more so like she tolerates me for the last 2 years because she's been stuck with me. And I actually went out to Groveport before this whole pandemic. So she's had to put up with me for a while. So I appreciate that. And my terrible internet that I finally updated, that I only updated because Jana gave me such a hard time for how pixelated I was in every call. So I appreciate the kind words there. And also Tia, good to see you here also from Gahanna. I'm gonna drop this deck into the chat for everyone in case you just want to kind of review the resources. Something that I'll also point out, if you have any questions outside of this chat, my name is Tyler Overstreet. Tyler.overstreet@newsela.com is my email address. We're working with the ESC of Central Ohio. If you're just looking for resources, or you want to get a demo account, or you just want to have a conversation around, what your district's doing and can Newsela be a part of that solution, let us know. Feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to have conversations. Why I think I have the best job here at Newsela is I get to have conversations like this all day with districts. So I'm really excited to share. Thank you everyone for listening today. And then I will stop talking and get back to the regular meeting.
Tyler, one other thing I want to point out too is as you're exploring our options with Newsela, keep in mind that while we have the ABAR resources built into the SEL components, we do integrate this conversation throughout all of our subjects. As Tyler mentioned, this has been a priority since day one for us. And we're just really excited to get more districts on board and continue this conversation and continue developing what the conversation within our platform as well.
Well, thank you, Tyler and Sarah, for sharing about your new collection. And also sharing how you help to support districts in this work. We're really excited that we're partnering with you. And as Tyler and Sarah shared, if you're interested in more information or you want a demo account, in the follow-up email, I'll be sure to include Tyler's information so you can reach out to him and get that set up so you can actually go in and kind of really see the different resources and lessons and things that they have. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you sharing more information about it. And I've been in it, and there's some really awesome things that I think will be helpful. So thank you again. And if you have questions as we kind of finish up our meeting, feel free to drop those in the chat for Tyler. So we're gonna go ahead and finish up. I want to just turn it back over to Dr. Austin. She wants to share some additional resources that she's put together, as well as some professional development opportunities that are coming up.
All right, thank you, Christine. Just wanted to share an upcoming training opportunity that I am co-hosting at the ESC. It's happening on February 24th from 3:30 to 5. It's titled Equity and Empathy in the Wake of COVID-19 and Social Injustice. So we'll really spend time looking at some of the inequities that we talked about and really situating them in a kind of structural or systemic racism lens, and think about how to kind of dismantle and disrupt some of these systems. We'll also share some resources about how to have these conversations with our colleagues and with our students as well. So you can register for that at the individual level on our website. And you can also on our website find our diversity, equity, and inclusion support page. And that has some training session descriptions. So if you're looking for PD to bring to your district, that is a snapshot of what I offer in some of our most kind of popular DEI trainings right now. So just wanted to share those resources. If anyone has any questions about those, you can always feel free to reach out to me. And Macarena, yes, it is the same one that we hosted a few months ago. So you have pretty much attended everything that we've offered. So shout out. All right. And here's our contact information.
Right, thank you for that.
Go ahead, Christine. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I want to say thank you for that, for sharing those resources. My contact information and Sierra's contact information is up here. And again, I'll send it out in the follow-up email in case you would like to reach out to either of us. You know, we're very excited to support your equity work however we can. So really appreciate all of you joining us in the meeting today. And I just wanted to leave just a few minutes for anyone, if you have any other things you would like to bring to the group or just ask the group. We always like to, in these Success Network meetings, just allow some time for networking. We used to be able to do that in person, you know, where people would have conversations during the meeting and kind of have those sidebars, but we still want to try to do that as much as we can virtually. So if there's anything that you would like to just bring to the group or ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that now, either unmute or drop it in the chat, and we can discuss those things. And if not, then we can go about the rest of our snowy day, but I just wanted to leave some time for that. Anybody? All right. Well, if there are other items, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to assist you with any of these things. So I'm really glad that you all joined us today on this snowy day, and I hope that all the vaccinations, for those of you that are going through that this week, go smoothly, and that you all stay safe, and hopefully soon we can get back together in person. So thank you again for joining, and I will send out that follow-up email probably, hopefully today. All right, thanks everybody.